our audience understand why fake news is a big threat and also how we can deal with it. And the person who can be accused of being a theorist in the room is somebody called William Tayebo from Makerere University. William, can you hear me? I'm going to start with you. Can you please help us understand what fake news is and how different it is from disinformation? William, can you hear me?
I can hear you very well. Emre, can you hear me in the studio?
Yes, please. Please go ahead.
Okay. For putting together this amazing team to have this important conversation. I think this conversation has been going at a global level. I'm glad that we have brought it to our nation. Fake news, the term itself, really, as you can hear it, is really an oxymoron. In other words, a contradiction of terms. But from our perspective as journalists and as journalism, we understand news to be accurate, truthful, balanced, fair, information that does no harm, that we package and disseminate to our audiences out there so that they can make informed decisions. That's news, conventional news. However, when you get information that is packaged using the channels that we use as journalists, using our platforms of journalism, whether traditional or social, but that information is inaccurate, is untruthful, does harm, is imbalanced, is impartial, that becomes fake news. And the United Nations, UNESCO actually provided a very good definition of that key concept, which is fake news, using 3 terms. Incidentally, we have used mainly only one of those terms. So fake news, number 1, as misinformation, which we can say information packaged with half-truth, lacking context and background. And this has become the most common definition of fake news because of that element that you can see some element of truth, but there is a lack of context and information. The second, which is rarely used, the second definition of fake news is disinformation, which is blatant lies and falsehoods. But all this is using channels that we use as journalists. And the third one, which is the last one, is what is called malinformation according to the UNESCO, which is malicious information, information that is spread to spoil the name of people, and you know, as the word in French, mal means bad. So information in bad taste, rumors in really bad taste, stigma that is malicious, that is defamatory. So those are the 3 key definitions of fake news: misinformation,
thank you, William.
disinformation, and malinformation. And that's how it differs from what we in conventional journalism call news. Over to you, Amy.
Okay, thank you, William, for that distinction. But can fake news also be propaganda? Is it used the same as propaganda? Can you help us also understand that? How different is it from propaganda then?
Andrew is the best person in best scholar of propaganda. But as we know, yes, I agree that actually some definitions of fake news, when you look at the objective of fake news, that's where it links up with propaganda. Because as we know, propaganda is spreading information for a given aim. You want to achieve, whether it's political, mainly political, but it could be other reasons as well. So in that case, if you are spreading information with the objective of winning audiences over to support your cause, that becomes propaganda, and in that case, it really links up very well with the concept of fake news.
Thank you. And in that case, I'm going to go to Andrew then, because you have led me to Andrew before I was ready. But Andrew, you call yourself the old man. You have even just now called yourself a grandfather to us. And, and in the business of news, indeed, you are an old man, because we started seeing you in the 1990s. And so when you look at what is happening now, and what was happening in the 1990s, can you tell us how it was then and how it is now? Maybe a little bit of history of fake news and how we are experiencing it now. At least we move from the classroom to the practice. Okay, Andrew seems to be having a problem, but this question can as well be answered by Carol, actually. Carol, you are the head of digital at the Daily Monitor, and you have also been in the newsroom for a very, very long time. As we wait for Andrew to come in. Okay. Andrew, did you hear my question? Hello? Welcome, Andrew Mwenda. Did you hear my question?
Yes, I heard it perfectly well.
Okay, please go ahead.
I was saying
Yes,
that fake news is not new. The attempt to spread false information, misinformation, and fake information in order to influence a particular decision or a particular reality, or to shape a particular reality, has always been there.
Yeah.
The thing is that it has been greatly amplified in the age of social media, because remember that in the 1990s, what we had was one person with who owned a newspaper, a television station, or a radio station, who had editors, and these are what we call gatekeepers. So the gatekeepers made sure that they received the information. These were newspaper owners, editors, sub-editors who cross-checked the facts. So there was a lot of control over the dissemination of information. With the advent of social media, anybody with a computer or a smartphone can use that smartphone. If they do audio, they can have a radio station. If they do a video, they will have a television station. And if they do, they post any story on Facebook, then they have a publishing house. So the advent of social media allowed everybody to become a publisher, and a broadcaster, and removed the importance of the gatekeeper. Now, because social media is rapidly and heavily competing with traditional media are trying to catch up with the news that is breaking on social media, and therefore it's also getting adulterated. All the old standards of cross-checking and verification are under pressure, because verification takes a lot of time. To do a good investigative story can take you 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But in the age of social media, things have to be instantaneous. And therefore fake news has become a very important instrument, largely because of the atomization of the means of mass communication.
Excellent. Yeah, go ahead. You were saying something.
Yes. The second thing is that traditional media are constructed in an arena where they are governed by a set of ethical values and norms. For example, us in journalism, we are taught that you must be truthful and accurate. You must be fair and balanced. You must also provide context. And when we said that you should not only be truthful, you should be also accurate. In other words, you should not simply report that so-and-so stole $1 million. You must be accurate that it was 1.5 million. To be fair means that the person whom you are writing negative information about should be given equitable space or airtime to defend themselves. Balance means that the different aspects of the story must be brought together. But these are values and ethics of what I would call traditional media. Social media is not subject to such imperatives, and neither is it subject to much regulation anymore. Now, let me tell you an interesting aspect. Remember that I and my former boss, Charles Onyango Bo, went to court and petitioned the court against the law of publication of false information which the government of Uganda had on the statute books. And the court ruled that it is okay for newspapers and other media to publish false information because it is very difficult at any particular time to say what is false and what is truthful. What we may deem false today, future events may prove that it was actually truthful. So when people normally talk about fake news, they say, but you, Andrew Mwenda, you are the one who went to the Constitutional Court, up to the Supreme Court, and you got a ruling that it should not be a crime for somebody to publish false information, which we now can call fake news, because that is also protected under free speech.
So
but
some people are making you the father of fake news in Uganda?
Well, I'm not sure the father. You could say the constitutional guarantor of fake news is me. And I'm sure that the Supreme Court of Uganda at that time, ruling I think in 2002 or 2003, the ruling was based on the fact that the news media were dominated by traditional institutions, newspapers, television, and radio, who actually had high ethical standards and respected the privacy of individuals, respected the verification of information. The story against which I was being prosecuted with Charles Obo, we had actually gone to Bank of Uganda, we had talked to the government's Ministry of Security, we had talked to the Ministry of Finance, we had collected a lot of information in order to ensure that the different players and affected parties are actually given equitable space in the story to explain things. So I don't know whether the Supreme Court will still hold the same ruling in the age of social media, in the age of the power of fake news to actually distort reality and create havoc.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. I want to bring that discussion a little bit to the studio because we have Carol Bayanga, who is the head of digital at Daily Monitor. And interestingly, most people on this panel have something to do with nation media at some point. So it might be an interesting conversation. But Carol, you're head of digital. What Andrew is basically telling us is that this has been aggravated. It's not new, but it has been aggravated by social media, meaning by digital platforms, by technology. What is your experience in the newsroom?
Yeah, Andrew is quite right because, and I think that cuts across all traditional media because most traditional media right now has social media as well. They have their own social media platforms, their own websites, and they're trying to ensure that they're also fast with the news. But in this day and age where something comes out and there's pressure to be able to, there's all kinds of pressure. One, to be able to say, do we have that news? Is that information there? Should we put it out? And then two, are we sure that news is correct, before we put it out? And then, so you battle because sometimes if you want to take your time, then sometimes you're beaten and everyone is coming to traditional media to find out and say, what are you saying? Is this actually true? And yet you need to verify. So it's a huge pressure. And I think a lot because people want to be able to break the news. You want to be the first with the news so that you're credited as being on the ground. But also because in a time like this with COVID-19, there's a lot of people want to know. People are checking their phones. People are checking everywhere. They want to know what's the latest. Is this true? Is this not true? So you also have the pressure as the press to be able to, as the media to be able to inform people. So that pressure is also there. But with the fake news that we've been talking about, it becomes difficult because you have to make sure that you have your facts right. You have to make sure that you are, you also have to make sure there is context. And this is something we also battle with because sometimes the facts are there, but you want to put context. Right, these are the numbers, but what is it in comparison to something else? So and so has said this, but what is the background of this situation? So it is a struggle. There is that pressure, and I constantly can see that traditional media sometimes has fallen, flat on its face, because sometimes they've gotten something and they are pretty sure, but only to find out it was not correct. Because, like Andrew says, that the verification process takes some time sometimes. Yeah.
Okay, and I know two people in this house, in this studio, have had their fair share of dealing with fake news in this season. And I remember a particular one that I'm going to ask Emma in terms of how that shocked them, that the results of COVID-19 were released and they were not the results. How have you been able to deal with fake news in this era? Is it particularly grave because of COVID-19, or you have actually had issues with fake news all along?
Thank you very much. Our experience is that we have learned to live with fake news. But how have we learned to live with fake news? By giving the right information. That is the solution to fake news. You have to do it in a timely manner, really equivalent to the timeliness. The news makers or the media houses also focus on breaking the story. They are focused at breaking the story. We are focused at breaking the right information. So we do not allow to create an information vacuum. But at times, processes of availing the accurate information sometimes delay, and this give fake news an edge over the facts.
Okay, so Don, you too have had your fair share of dealing with fake news. I've watched you, tweet correct information to sort of combat what has been put earlier. To what extent is this a big problem? Are you also firefighting the way and the way Emma is?
Yes, first of all, we must accept that the growth of technology, like Andrew was talking of the situation in the 90s, where basically you had a few media houses. A story would happen on Friday and everyone waits for the Monday paper to see it. Now you don't have that kind of luxury at this moment. Like I said, anyone with a gadget, with a smartphone, somehow has turned into a journalist, a publisher, and all these things. So yes, so the advent of this technology means that there are many people doing so many of the things that were traditionally left for the journalists. What I wanted to point out is that the downside of that, obviously for the media, is that you can now reach many more people in a shorter time and have information disseminated largely. But it has also given people power they didn't have previously, people who might not have the same ethical grounding like what would be a trained journalist. And so because of that, you expect a lot of this, what Dr. Tayewa defined as fake news, misinformation, disinformation, malinformation. However, my own view and seeing what has been happening is that even if people found, let's assume, a tweet that they are not certain about, they would come back to you whom they consider to be the credible source to verify it. And for me, I think that is the silver lining, not just for us, the communicators, but even for the media houses that Carol was talking about. I think this is an opportunity to grow credibility. I think when you have a situation of an overload of information, what is going to happen is that it is credibility that's going to sell you. So that's why I wouldn't be in a hurry, for example, if I'm a credible media house, to just break the news. I must make sure that even if I come late to the news, it is the accurate news. It has the right context and all these things. And I think if you do that, these audiences, I know part of the challenge that media houses are struggling with is that audiences are shifting. But I think audiences can come back if you build the credibility, which is why I've been communicating a lot with Emma. When all these things come, you see online people have tweeted this, that these numbers are. I call Emma and I tell him, Emma, can you verify this, since you're the person at the source at the testing center, whatever it is. And until we are sure that the information is credible, we're not going to come out and comment. And so when you come out, people can be certain that this information that Don is bringing, or Emma, or whatever, is credible information. So just to place the wider context in this discussion, I think that for the media houses, the journalists, this is an opportunity for them to grow credibility. That when you have everyone writing about something, let it be that it is you who writes about what is credible. And I'm sure when you do that, people are going to come back to you. So you'll be the source of reference. You'll be like the real authority on that subject.
Thank you. And I think to close this round, I would like to go to Sheila, who is in television. And Sheila, can you hear me? Hello? Yes, I would have wanted Sheila to also give us an experience from television, because we've heard from print and from the communicators who are actually firefighting the whole idea of fake news. Yes. Yes. So, Sheila, what's your experience in television? And I see a lot of your tweets on social media as well. How are you experiencing fake news, and how are you dealing with it? Sheila, please unmute yourself if you can.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. I think, first of all, the beauty with speaking last is that you either disagree or agree with what everyone has said. So I agree
Okay.
entirely with what all my senior colleagues have said. And I don't think that what we experience in television is any different from what the print guys experience or what the digital guys experience. However, like Andrew said, fake news has been with us for as long as we can all care to look back. As far back as the Cold War, the World War I, the 16th century, where people use information or misinformation to cause sort of panic in an enemy's camp so they could either buy into your narrative or otherwise. But to bring it back to the current context, I think that fake news is, first of all, we need to understand what exactly causes fake news. And like Emma rightly said, most times it is because of the vacuum or the information vacuum that is created from either the communicators or the urgency, the need to have information. So if people don't have the kind of content or the kind of information they're looking for, they're most likely going to, put in their own kabozi, like we call it, or their own narrative or stories. So it is very imperative or important that communicators embrace the golden minute rule, which has now changed from the golden hour rule to the golden minute. And oftentimes it's not that people want you to have the immediate answer there and then. It's as simple as acknowledging that we are aware that there is this and that, but we're doing this and that to bring you the right information. For now, please ignore the information that is circulating. But oftentimes you don't even get that, yeah? And some people think that playing safe and waiting for when you have the final minute detail, that is when you should communicate. But I don't think that is the case. And I think it was Dawn that mentioned it, that whereas you might want to communicate accurate information, even just acknowledging that you are aware of what is happening is enough for people to sort of lean back and say, okay, we're now going to wait. We're not going to take in any kind of information that we're just receiving. We're just going to sit back and sort of wait for official communication. But also very importantly, I think that this points to the wider question or context of our digital literacy rates in the country. That if you still have people walking into MTN or Airtel to do the simple things or to ask the technical team there to install for them WhatsApp, then they're most likely going to fall for any lie. And yet they can't have the confidence or the awareness to go on Google and search and see, and just mere typing is, has President Museveni sacked so and so, or has President Museveni appointed or reshuffled the army? Those basic things, because most likely by the time it starts circulating, some big media house or credible sources will have picked it up, and then you can verify before you even start sharing it on WhatsApp. So creating awareness and the digital literacy in our country goes a long way in ensuring that we detect, because I think for me, we can say media should do this or journalists should do this, but I think the most important thing should be with the end users of the information. And as long as you don't create awareness in the end users of the information, that they also have the power to verify and cross-check before they share the information, then I think we're only putting the burden on the media. Like Dawn said, right now, social media has sort of democratized information. Everyone has access to this information. It's not just the journalists. So the people that have access to this information must also be able to verify. But they cannot verify if they don't have the digital literacy or the awareness and the confidence to go to Google and do basic searches. Sometimes I see forwards, I'm like, can't you just search? Can you just go on Google and find out? You don't even need to call me, you just need to go and... But then, how do they go on Google if they don't even have the confidence or even the knowledge to question what they read? Because to them, everything that is written is truth. Yeah, so
absolutely.
There's so much that can be done, but it is very important that we equip the end users of information, the end users of this whatever is circulated, to be able to also verify.
Absolutely. So while Don is saying that there's a silver lining because people can actually call and verify, we also have to ask ourselves how many people are actually able to call and verify, because that must be just a few people who are able to do that. Majority of the people, as Sheila says, still walk to MTN for basic things like install for me WhatsApp and so on. So they would be very gullible to consuming fake news actually. And that means
Can
that...
I add something to what Sheila was saying?
Yes, please, Andrew.
You know, Sheila, the issue is when it comes to consumption of information, there is a concept, I think, in psychology called confirmation bias. Many people, oftentimes, all of us, most times, are likely to, are more inclined to believe that information which confirms the biases that we already have. So if you think, for example, that Museveni is a very bad and corrupt leader, and you get information which confirms that, you are likely to buy it. So it is not that people lack the tools to cross-check. People often look for information in order to satisfy an inner hunger. I just want to think that the Andrew Mwenda or Sheila Mbuchire are very bad people, and I need to, if I see information that satisfies that inner hunger and thirst that confirms these beliefs, I am much more likely to believe it, and I don't want to cross-check it, because, you know, in investigative journalism we say, if you want to kill a story, try to verify it. Because, you know, when you're in investigative journalism, you get a tip and the story is so hot.
Yeah.
And you begin investigating and verification. Then you find it's a hoax. And that's how you kill a story. Because if you don't want to kill your story, just don't verify it. So for most people, especially who don't have the training of journalism or those media institutions that do not take ethical rules seriously, when they get the first information, they don't want to verify, they want to run with it. And those who believe it, I don't think they believe it because they think it's true. They believe it because it confirms their biases and therefore fulfills that inner thirst for bad information about a particular person or institution.
Thank you so much, Andrew. But what does that say about public confidence in news from particular sects of media? For example, people's choice of consuming communication from the Daily Monitor or reading the Independent because they believe that Andrew Mwenda is more likely to say the correct thing or what is true. Where does that place public trust in the news process?
I could say this, that you see, the audience is never univocal. People are not the same. There is a large community of people who are deeply interested in facts, and therefore they will always be inclined. Let me give you a personal experience. If somebody puts news on television that so and so has died, perhaps a global leader, I immediately go to BBC or CNN or Al Jazeera, these websites of the big media organizations, before I can believe it is true. But I see many other people on social media begin spreading a particular information of the death of a person. There is a time people used to announce that Mugabe is dead when he was still president, when the guy is not dead. So, so there are people in the audience who are much more driven by, they are looking for information that is verified, and they will come to traditional media because they trust us. And then, but I don't think those people constitute a big majority. There is a vast number of people out there who are looking for information in order to weaponize it. Remember that information can also be a weapon. If I am fighting somebody, I don't need the truth for me to pursue my fight. If you are people power and Bobby Wine and you want to show that the government of Uganda is corrupt and incompetent, it does not matter whether a particular allegation is true. What matters, does this allegation advance my agenda? Because information can be weaponized to promote a particular narrative. So your aim determines how you use information. Because if your aim is to undermine the credibility of government, then it does not make sense for you to verify and establish the truth. It's better for you to pursue the lie. Remember that people use information not to simply explain reality. People use information in order to influence reality, in order to influence how others see that reality.
Absolutely.
So reality is a contested ground between those who want to explain things properly and those who want to win by hook or crook. By the way, the final thing I want to say, and this is to Don and to Emmanuel, the biggest problem government of Uganda faces is that it thinks that it can keep quiet and get away with it. Because remember that when you're not communicating, it isn't true that your enemies are quiet. If you're not trying to brand yourself, it's not true that no one else is trying to brand you. Your enemies want to brand you as corrupt, as incompetent as anything, and therefore it is always imperative upon you to always be the one to proactively present your case to the public. And doing great things, and I see Ministry of Health are doing great things, without publicizing them is like winking at a pretty girl in the dark. You know what you're doing, she does.
Okay, Andrew, okay, thank you very much. And you've nicely brought me back to the studio. I was missing the voice of the people near me. And I'm going to start with Don, who is seated right near me. And I think you've heard what Andrew said. And Sheila also said something similar, that, you know, even just confirming that we are aware of what is going on is actually good enough. And I think as you come in to talk about what Andrew said, also to tell us a little bit about the dangers of fake news, because that's really ultimately why we are having this conversation. Yeah. What are the dangers? And then later on we can move into how do we exactly deal with it.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. First of all, I want to agree that we obviously have a big penetration, for example, now of the internet, most of it consumed on smartphones. But yeah, like Sheila said, maybe there's also need for lots of literacy of the consumers. I've seen in some of our inner discussions when some of these things, you see, like Doctor said, at times intention is important. Andrew has talked about weaponizing information. There are people who will probably, out of excitement, maybe tweet something that's not verified, whatever. But there are people who sit and also intentionally create fake news with certain either ill motives or whatever it is, maybe to create a state of panic and all these things. You know, someone says there's going to be a military reshuffle ahead of State of Nation, and they have created a fake, a cloned account of the army spokesperson, the government spokesperson, and the president's spokesperson on a thread. So you can tell that the motive of this person is actually perhaps sinister. Now, I think that for such people, there must be means of bringing some level of accountability. I know Andrew said he went to court and fake news was basically cleared. But we have other issues, computer misuse and all these things. We still have things like criminal...
We did not say fake news was cleared. Let me defend Andrew.
Criminal defamation and others. They're still on the offense or on the penal code and others. But yes, I agree that perhaps the biggest challenge currently, and this must be a concerted effort, both the private sector and even the public sector, Ministry of Rights and others, how do we help people to be able to appreciate the need for authenticity and credibility? It's a discussion I've been having. I've even spoken to some people at the Ministry of ICT here, because we have seen that there's lots of people, and most of them are innocent consumers of fake news. So how do we help them to know that, for example, if you have seen results, someone is purporting that Uganda today has confirmed, like there was a time they talked about, I think, 200 cases in a single day. Where do you go and find this credible information? So can we refer people to the Ministry of Health, whether website or official Twitter account or Emma and others, the minister? So we must be able to tell people that there are sources where you can verify, like Andrew was saying, you see an international story, where do you go, which platforms? That is very important. But what I mentioned, I do not want, you see, we still have a compact as the media. There's a certain trust the public has in you. That's why I'll say that for the traditional media, for the media houses, there's still an opportunity here. In the midst of all this noise of everyone being able to say whatever they want to say, I think for them the important thing is credibility. Sheila spoke about at least confirming something, whatever it is. I think the sources can do that. But for you, as Daily Monitor, as New Vision, as UBC, whatever, before you go on air with a story, it must be that you're certain about it. And that is why in all that noise, and I'm sure the stats can show, for example, when you have a big story breaking in this country, I'm sure if you looked at the traffic and how it moves, you'll see that most people are going to what they think are official sites to confirm that information. So I do not think that the traditional media or the big media, the normal media, it should fall for the danger of trying to be fast with news and being inaccurate and spreading false information and things like that. So for me, I think that's it. But about the dangers of fake news, I think a week ago I read an article on the BBC they tried to delve into this. Of course, it was not, I've not seen some local studies here, but one of the things that I've pointed out that fake news during this pandemic is that people have done what would be the wrong things because of the fake news. There's a story in the UK of a gentleman and his wife who had been made to believe, one, that first of all, this disease, coronavirus, is a hoax, it is a fake. It doesn't exist. So because of that, they did not observe any of the guidelines, social distancing and all these things. And in a week's time, they were taken ill. Both him and, actually, this girl was being interviewed on his hospital bed and was saying, I made a mistake. We thought this was a fake thing. I think in the UK also, I saw that about 70 masts have been vandalized because part of the misinformation around this pandemic has been that it has something to do with 5G network. So people are attacking engineers of telecom companies, saying that the cause of this. In Iran,
and I mean, we've seen people attacking Bill Gates and
exactly, and
as well.
In Iran, I heard that about 700 deaths have been attributed to people drinking, what would you call it, alcohol, but what is the word they use? That it's kind of dangerous alcohol, because they were made to believe that
illicit brew or
something like that. They were made to believe that, you see, this can cure. And I think even the US people have been drinking detergents since at some point, I think the president said, you know, although he later said he was saying it sarcastically that people could actually drink detergents. So there are lots of these cases. So there are people who actually, when they consume this fake information, they actually follow it. And it has had very adverse effects. So it is true that fake news has actually had adverse effects, but the role goes back to both the authorities, the ministries, the whatever, but also the media to make sure that they are able to counter this and give people the right information.
Thank you. And I'll go to Dr. Tayebwa a little later, but first to you, Emma. I wonder, as we talk about verification, is the ministry or are people in charge of information able to give information to media houses as quickly as they need it? Why do they have to turn to other sources to actually fill the gap? Is there a delay in terms of giving information to the people? Just if we can talk about access to information, how easy is it for me as a journalist, for Sheila to walk to any ministry and actually say that ministry so and so, I need this kind of information? How many people does Sheila have to see before she can actually get the correct information?
Thank you very much. I will address myself mainly to the COVID-19 pandemic and how journalists have been accessing information. And also the general public. The ministry has also matched the level of technology to adopt use of social media pages which are verified. Verification is one thing to counter the fake news. So someone is able to, for instance, like now, today there has been a delay to release results from yesterday's testing. But already when you go to our Twitter page, we've already put out a message that we are experiencing a delay to release results. We are going to communicate. When you do not say anything, then you give an opportunity to those ones who now can use Photoshop and these other apps that can manipulate any information. I saw someone can even manipulate, for instance, a WhatsApp chat and use it to create friction between friends. I can allege that I was in, someone can create alleging that I was in a certain WhatsApp group giving some information about, for instance, my boss. So if you do not have this technological literacy, you are likely to fall for it. So continuously, we think the media's role is also to educate people on how to use this technology. You might be bearing a smartphone, you're not smart to use it. So that is one. But we have come out to ensure that we give information on real time, and also I was following some podcasts on how UK was approaching their communication response. Given that under World Health Organization, risk communication, community engagement, and social mobilization is a very strong pillar in periods of a pandemic. So if you do not get public health messaging right, then also you'll find it hard to address the epidemic. So, for instance, you can come and the officials dodge questions that are being asked by journalists. So if they are not getting the answers to their questions, they are forced to speculate. So with the background like myself having been in a newsroom, I put myself in the shoes of a journalist. What is the journalist likely to ask on this particular subject? So I ensure that as we prepare any form of communication, it answers to those potential questions on some issues where there is a lot of myth. For instance, COVID being really a new disease, this pandemic is unprecedented. People were recording the audio messages claiming how they are using garlic. First, from even Asian countries, there are very many Ugandans who are abroad, and they were recording themselves using Luganda, which is mostly listened to, saying this disease is a hoax. You can cook your garlic, cook this and this, this concoction, and it can heal you and cure you COVID.
Just like the alcohol.
So our role as Ministry of Health, as also working together with agencies like World Health Organization, was to direct people to where they can find reliable information. We went to an extent of creating a COVID portal for all the stats on the website for Uganda, for the Ugandan situation. And we have also a WhatsApp number where you can send a message and get. We also launched a WhatsApp bot working together with Ministry of ICT and also Facebook, such that this one can use artificial intelligence to answer issues like symptoms. What symptoms? Because at the onset, before when we registered our first case, that's when we had the most peak of malinformation, misinformation. People wanted to be quick to break the story. Uganda has confirmed the case, yet it is non-existent. They were using a picture of the president to legitimize and also validate the tweet. So we were also almost not sleeping to ensure that as soon as that is out, we have the right information going out. So we've been more or less working 24 hours.
Okay, so I'll come back to you, Carol, but I need to get back to Dr. Tayebwa, and the issue of media literacy, media and information literacy is continuously coming up. And I wonder, as Emma is talking about the ministry also doing enough to make sure that they were on top of their game, how are academic institutions actually doing? What role can those who are training the journalists actually play in terms of ensuring that there is enough media and information literacy?
Can I just interject on that? Doctor,
Thank you,
one of my
Emily.
disappointments has been that the people who
Don, I want to start with Don. There is a study that just came out very recently. Was released actually this week. 15 authors, amazing, including a very big team from Makerere University, but also a very big team from the ministry, including the minister herself, Emma's boss, and the PS. And that study is entitled Infodemic: How an Epidemic of Misinformation Could Lead to a high number of the novel coronavirus disease cases in Uganda. So that's a very important study that has very interesting indications, and based on the conversation that we've been having, they point out 3 categories of people. Of course, they use mathematical modeling, but the key takeaway is that you have spreaders, whom they call initiators and propagators, who, when given an opportunity, can actually cause a very big crisis. Now, back to your question, very quickly. I totally agree with the panelists. Starting with Sheila, when she points out the fact that we need more digital literacy, but I think also Emma and Don broadened that to talk about media and information literacy. It's not just digital literacy, but also information and media literacy. How can we help populations to define and articulate information needs, their information needs, and locate the information? Where can they go to access the right information and organize that information? How can they be able to harness the resources they have, their cell phone and so on, to get the right information? But media literacy goes beyond that, because it looks at the roles and functions of the media, the conditions the media can play, and so on and so on. And Emily, I agree that we as public institutions are playing catch-up. I think you agree that you at UCU, we at Makerere University, are now reworking our curricula to make sure that we make MIL, or if you want to have digital literacy as well as part of that, as a key component of our curricula, so that we are able to help the people we train when they go out there as journalists, but not just as journalists, but also communicators, public relations officers like Emma and Don Wanyama, to be able to provide information to the public out there. The missing link, of course, I think you agree with me, Emily, is the community aspect. And I think one of the colleagues, I think it was Don or Emma, talked about community engagement. And I think that's where we ought to play a big role, to take the university to the community, all the research that we do, to make sure that it goes out there to the community to help people make sense of this very complicated information overload that has been called an infodemic. Over to you, Emily.
Thank you. And how exactly are we supposed to, how do you think the other actors in this whole scenario can also play a role in terms of creating information, media and information literacy beyond academic institutions?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Actually, in this study that I talked about, the infodemic study by our colleagues at School of Public Health, together with government agencies, together with the Ministry of Health, which has done, by the way, an amazing job. Emma, I really want to commend you. I think you've done an incredible job in providing fact checkers, myth busters, and so on. I think it's really to make sure that we make the link between the agencies that have the credible information, in our case, which is the Ministry of Information, and the various NGOs at community level, and be able to point people to those kind of places that have credible information. And to the journalists as well. I mean, I still have a lot of faith in media institutions that indeed, as we earlier on said, I think it was Don who talked about the credibility issue, that it's an opportunity for the media to grow their credibility, portfolio. If we, bring back the credibility to, journalists and make sure that media houses can be trusted as credible sources of information, I think that will be very helpful to the communities as well.
Okay, thank you, William. I will come back to our Zoom friends, Andrew and Sheila, but in the meantime, I want to bring in Carol. Carol, does an ordinary citizen have a role in fighting fake news beyond your newsroom? What does me as an ordinary person or somebody who is watching, what can they do to fight fake news? But also, since you're in the newsroom, there's an interesting question from a participant that does the chase to break news actually fuel fake news for traditional media? You may as well answer that.
Okay. What can an ordinary person do? See, that's an interesting question, because I think that while we want the ordinary people to do something, we can't force them to do it. We can't make them do it. I think we have to, first of all, show them that it's a good thing if you do this. It is a good thing if you understand the danger behind this and therefore do A, B, C, D, F, G. So what can an ordinary person do? One, I believe that they should be able to, over time, recognize where the fake news is and where the proper news is. So when you begin to realize every time I'm on this group, half of the stuff is just wrong. It's, you know, it's verified later by the news sources as wrong. So maybe we either need to rework what we send on this group, or I need to quit it because it's giving me a lot of information that is not helpful to me. So I think one is for them to be able to sort of understand and see, where am I getting my information from? Is it helpful? Is it correct? Has it been, you know, verified? Have I been able to actually see that this is correct or not? And then determine whether or not to keep that as a news source or to leave it. The other thing also, I think, is the responsibility for the person to be able, once they have seen and verified and know that this is correct, because they have the information, they have the proof, is then to spread it themselves. And then to be able to, you know, to come back and say, but I don't think so. I think this is what is actually the correct news. The person has said, the authorities have said this. Even independent people, but who are authorities in their fields, have said this. Because sometimes people tend to be biased and say, no, it's from the government, you know, they have propaganda, that kind of thing. But if you have independent people who are not of the government, but who are respected as authorities in their fields, then people are more likely, are sort of prone to think and say, okay, if someone who is, you know, not in the government and is an authority, we respect them, has said the same thing, then it's possibly true. So for people to, the second thing is people to be able to say, okay, I have gotten the information, I believe this is the truth, and then to spread it themselves. Because one problem I have noticed is that people will, that when the fake news comes out, everyone is going to, you know, spread it and send it to all groups and everything. When it is verified, it is not spread as much, as not as viral as the fake news. So the responsibility is for both the media and even people to sort of say, okay, this has been clarified, this has been, you know, let us then let people know that this is actually the true, the news that is the correct information. So I think as individuals, people should be able to, because at the end of the day, it affects them. I keep saying that people, of course everyone sort of thinks, oh, the media is there to sort of, the media is there to inform people to make good choices for their lives across the board. So when the news is out, it helps you make it helps make a choice and say, this is what I'm going to do to improve my life, to improve the life of my children, to improve the life of my neighborhood, and that sort of thing. So those are some of the things that I think the ordinary person can do to verify where the news is coming from, and once they have verified and known that this is correct, to be able then to spread that and say, look, people, I have found this, it has the correct information, it has the correct sources, it has all the proof that, you know, we were sort of debating about and looking for. So I think those are some of the ways.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. And let me go to Sheila. Sheila, I wonder, what role do you think government should be playing in fighting fake news? Hello, Sheila?
Hi, sorry. Somehow the host keeps unmuting me, which is right. So
Okay.
I'm unmuting myself. Yeah.
Okay. You're welcome to speak to that, please.
Okay. So first of all, I think that one thing we must accept is that fake news is here to stay. And like Andrew started by saying that fake news has been here with us. The only difference is that now we're starting to share it more, or that we have bigger mediums or more mediums of communicating it. Like racism now that we're hearing in the United States, racism has always existed. The only difference is that it's being filmed, it's being shared, it's being talked about more than it was. So I think that as what government can do, and which I really want to give credit, is that there's already some, of course I don't speak for government, but I know that as a journalist that there's already some steps that are being taken. For instance, I think there's a national task force on the 4th Industrial Revolution, which I understand has proposed some mechanisms or some advice to the National Curriculum Development Center, right? So if we think that fake news has been here with us for a long time, then we can be sure that it's going to stay with us probably forever as well. So we need to start looking at incorporating these mechanisms or software solutions that help us detect fake news. And that is artificial intelligence, that is machine learning in the younger generation. So early childhood exposure that it shouldn't just be a child in city parents or one of the city schools that has access to movies or access to TVs and therefore able to operate a phone. When they grow up, they shouldn't be the only ones that can actually go on Google or verify. It should be as deep as anybody else, as anyone in Kazo, as anyone in Elgon Mountains or wherever, to be able to verify or have access and exposure to these channels that we have or these mediums that we have. Therefore, for me, what I think government should help us do, and in the long term, of course, there are the short-term things that we're talking about, being proactive and not just waiting for a crisis to communicate, and therefore not just be on the end, on the end of having to deny, only denying the news, but also communicating and filling the void, yeah, and ensuring that people actually know. If say the president or whoever communicates, or okay, let me move away from that area because the spokesperson's here. But
yes, he's near me here.
Organizations or brands being able to communicate as often as possible, whether there is anything to communicate, but just being able to give people assurance and confidence, then you therefore take away the ammunition from those that are likely to misrepresent or have any sinister motive. So what the government can do in the short term is communicate. Do not be reactive, be proactive. Because
communicate. The government is hearing. Yeah, but
the other thing is to ensure that we have early childhood exposure to these digital platforms, or not just digital platforms, but computing skills, yeah, so that they grow up with these skills and are able to do the verification. Yeah, I think it was Bayanga who said sometimes you cannot force people to do what you're telling them to do. Yeah, but if you give them the skills, right now I may not need to go and just believe anything that is shared on WhatsApp because I've already had the exposure. So we need to expose our children at a young age because these are the people we are leaving the seats that we're occupying for.
Okay.
That's my contribution.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. And let me move to Andrew. Andrew, you're the one who went to court, and I want to put this question to you. Where do we draw the line between actually fighting fake news by the government, fighting fake news and infringing on freedom of information or freedom to access to information? How can we draw the line, and what more can government actually do?
First of all, Emily, I want to dissuade you and Sheila from the belief that when it comes to the spread of fake news, government is a neutral player. Governments all over the world, the biggest manufacturers and spreaders of fake news. They want to manipulate the population, they want to make people believe that they are doing well. So government is part of the culprit, the opposition, the politicians, whether in government or opposition, are culprits. And of course, other social groups are culprits. In fact, we need to ask ourselves, therefore, who would be the best guardian of the public interest against fake news? I don't think it is the government. I think that the social forces organized within the civil society that think it's imperative to subject every piece of information to factual verification, that should be, the government can play a role, but I don't think that it would be, I would trust it as a neutral arbiter, because you cannot have a hyena sitting as a judge in a case deciding the fate of the meat market, or a monkey to decide the fate of a forest.
But
So
Andrew,
a neutral party in here.
yeah, but Andrew, even the social actors you're talking about will be accused of dealing with donor interests, especially civil society. And so you're probably right that no person, maybe not government or even the other actors, may be as neutral. But how best can we actually fight fake news? Not necessarily government alone, but what role should government play, what role should civil society play, and what role does an ordinary citizen, as myself, actually have to play?
There are times when the government has invested interest in the truth, especially if the fake news is to its disadvantage. Because if the fake news is to its advantage, the government therefore will not have a vested interest in it will not have vested interest in correcting that news. So what I can say is that the best way to manage misinformation, or fake news for that matter, is to ensure that those constituencies that lose as a result of that particular fake news have their voices amplified. I think I have a lot of faith in traditional media because my experience of the last 26, 27 years in traditional media tells me that there is greater imperative. I see a lot of these walls are falling in social media. Rather in traditional media, I have seen people go on TV and say things. I'll give a personal example. Taban Burundi went on TV and said, I went to the central bank, I got 5 billion shillings in a cash, put it in my car, then the president called me and said, take it back. First of all, it is, I cannot believe that anybody in the world can believe such a fake thing. You see? so I called NBS and said, listen, I don't mind this man saying bad things about me, but I mind that you provide him that platform because as I respect NBS a lot, you owe your listeners and viewers a responsibility, a minimum responsibility. First of all, to call him to order, but two, also to correct this kind of information. Because so many people, respectable people out there who know this is a practical impossibility. What you see, you can project fake news that has a practical possibility. In this case, the guy was saying something that is practically impossible. You can't go to the central bank in Uganda and withdraw cash. So the fact that a traditional media organization does not feel such a sense of responsibility, from the owner to the news producer to all the people involved, scares me, because I don't believe that government is the best institution, but I think that traditional media can be the best ones because they can uphold particular ethical imperatives of truth and accuracy, fairness and balance. And that is what scares me, that the traditional media are now also becoming
sources of fake news.
Media, in which case purveyors of fake news. I don't mind a media organization, by the way, making a mistake. As a journalist and as a publisher, I have made many mistakes. But your inability to correct your own mistake, even when it's so obvious that it's blatantly false, that is what should be worrying us, and we ask ourselves, therefore, where are these platforms through which we can promote factual accuracy and media ethics? If it is civil society funded by donors, I'm suspicious of it. Now I'm becoming suspicious of traditional media. I am very suspicious of government.
You see?
I don't trust academics.
Okay, you don't trust academics and everybody else, but how can we use technology, Andrew?
They may not address the concerns I have.
Okay, Andrew, I hear you, and I hear you, Andrew, and I'm sure William is itching to say something about you not trusting academics. But how can we use technology to actually?
He was once an academic.
He still is.
Coming back.
Okay. But Andrew, what about the role of technology in fighting fake news?
You see, technology is a double-edged sword. Technology is the biggest weapon we can employ to fight fake news, but technology at the same time is also the biggest weapon in the hands of those who want to purvey fake news. In fact, without technology, fake news would not be, well, it would be spread. Remember, you guys are very young. Those of us who were born I was born in 1912. So in 1978, 79, I was 67, 68 years. Brother was 60. I was 66, 67 years.
You see? Okay, please let's stick to the truth, even including your age.
I was born 3rd October 1912.
Okay.
So Idi Amin was brought down by fake news because there's something called Radio Katwe. Amin had blocked all forms of, he had his own fake news through Radio Uganda and Uganda Television and Voice of Uganda, which was a newspaper, which was Voice of Idi Amin. And Ugandans created an alternative platform for information, which was called Radio Katwe. Radio Katwe was not an institution, neither was it a form of technology. It was, for that matter, primitive technology. It was radio by word of mouth. A rumor would begin in Katwe, or wherever it started, although they call it Radio Katwe because most rumors started in Katwe. And it would spread across the whole of Uganda in no time, and it was taken as truth. But a significant part of Radio Katwe, I would even say maybe 80%, was always false. So Ugandans fought Idi Amin using false news, for that matter, fake news. And I'm therefore conscious of the fact that fake news may not always be a bad thing if it's organized against the tyrant and the dictator. But technology can amplify fake news and spread it much more rapidly than the lack of technology. So if you ask me, yes, we can use technology to control, to manage fake news. If you're on Twitter and somebody has tweeted something wrong, we can use that technology to immediately correct the information. But equally, technology, now look at something called deepfake. Do you know deepfake? Deepfake is where, the way I am speaking right now with you, somebody will go and manipulate my voice, reproduce my voice using software, and imitate my voice and video as if I'm saying something exactly different or opposite from what I'm saying right now. Then there is Photoshop. Somebody can go and manipulate a picture and create a story which technologically appears, or on the face of it looks true when it is not.
Okay.
I don't know whether any of the panelists there are aware of deepfake. Today, if you show me a video of anything, I will not believe it, because you can simulate a video of Yoweri Museveni saying, I am going to kill so-and-so, or when I should be arrested, which is fake. And I wonder how, also using technology, we can combat that. And if
Can I come in? Can I come in?
Yes, Sheila. I was just about to come back to the studio. Briefly, please.
Yeah, just briefly. I think that Mwenda and his old men of the clan need to be very fair to technology, because I think that what we get wrong, and I think I also heard the Katiko the other day bashing people on social media as idlers, or I think that technology, we need to change how we look at technology and look at technology as a productivity tool. That for everything, for every negative thing on technology, there's like 3 times good things about it. And the deep fakes that you talk about, Andrew, there's now software that helps detect those deep fakes. We just need to get exposure. And that's what I was saying, that the only way to combat fake news is giving the power or educating the end users.
Thank you.
There's also
Thank you,
software
Sheila.
that helps you detect when they talk about you, Andrew, on Twitter or Facebook. Even if they don't tag you, you will get a notification and say, so-and-so is talking about you. And then you can go very quickly and retract or ask them to retract, or, you know, it has to be as prompt as possible, because now, because of the democratization of this information, everyone has the power. And indeed, there are tools to help combat some of this misinformation. We just need to be exposed to them. And perhaps the other thing we can help, or government can help us do, which partly has been done, is employing or deploying people in positions that actually have knowledge and understanding of these things, right? So I think that...
So they should not deploy 19, 18 people.
Whatever we want to do, but the truth is, for every bad thing about technology, there's an equally good thing, and there's an equally good tool that is being, or that can be deployed to help combat this either deep fakes or, you know, whatever you can call them. That people actually need to know that when you receive a video on your WhatsApp, you can screen grab that video, put it in Google Images, and see that this video was taken in India, not Uganda, or that people are being burned to death, and they're claiming it is in Uganda, but it's actually in whichever other country. So we need to know, and I think that the purveyors of information, both good and bad, need to be equipped. Yeah, so government communicators, private communicators, journalists need to continuously be trained on some of this software. Yeah, social media listening tools. There's even, by the way, there are even tools that help you know when your name is mentioned on TV, not just social media. There are tools that will help you know when your brand organization is being mentioned on radio, right? So, but we just need to invest in some of these tools. I think that is the only way we can arm ourselves against fake news or, you know, malinformation.
Thank you, Sheila. That's brilliant. And I think that Carol, who works in digital platform, is attentively listening. And I think both of you are correct, really. Andrew also started from the point of view of technology can be a double-edged sword. It can do good things and it can also do bad things. But I wanted to come to you, Don. You have been a particular victim of technology in its bad way and in its good way. Please take this up.
Yeah, I think the view here is that this is always going to be a marketplace, really. there'll be competing ideas, and what I think we refer to as technology here is largely platforms. What we are saying is that maybe 20, 30 years ago, the only platforms we had was the print media, 1, 2 TVs, 1 radio, whatever. These have now grown, and on top of this, we now have these digital platforms now, social media and all these others. I wouldn't have an issue with the platforms, largely. I think ultimately it is the content. Now, Andrew, of course, did mention that some of this is information that people are creating to weaponize. I wanted to use a scenario. One of the things we're struggling with lately is people, for example, forging purported presidential directives from State House, and then they share them on WhatsApp. So you've seen all these letters doing the rounds. The president has ordered Nakalema to investigate, I don't know who and who. Like there's one which has been doing the rounds lately, and it's a fake document. Now, we must ask, in terms of regulation and even punitive action, what is the spirit of the originator of this kind of document? Luckily enough, like Sheila is saying, and unfortunately some people probably think it is not easy, but actually at times it's possible to trace the origin of these things. For example, the one who did this particular letter, we have traced him. He's a young man based in Masaka, and we're going to ask him what the spirit of this was, because this borders on criminality. We can talk of democratizing the space and whatever, but outright forgeries and then putting them out there in the name of the head of state, for example, has criminal intent to it. So we can discuss the we're talking about infringement on rights of speech and expression and whatever, but also there must be a question on motive, and that's why I mentioned earlier that you asked Carol about the public. The public must also be aware, especially those who intentionally generate this kind of information, that there could be repercussions. Let's not massage people to think that you can go forge a story that creates a stampede in town, leading to deaths and whatever it is, and you just go away scot-free because you have a certain right to creating information.
Yeah, and that's why I was asking earlier, at what point do we know that we are actually fighting fake news, and at what point do we know that we are infringing on the right to information?
My own view that then brings us to the arbiters. There must be some level of for example, regulation. Andrew raised the issue, for example, of panelists going on air and making lots of defamatory remarks about someone, a subject, who has no right of response, who the moderator of that particular show cannot interrogate those alleged facts being put on air. So can I just come here and allege that Emily, while running UCU Mass-Comm department, was able to help students, cheat exams, and and I go away with it like that? It can't be like that. So there must be some. For a long time, many of us in the media believe that there must be a form of media regulation, peer regulation, and unfortunately for Uganda, I think it has never caught on. And because of the failure to have that peer regulation, then you leave government. It has to come back to government to do the regulation. So the enforcement of those must come back. That's why I was telling Andrew earlier that you have criminal defamation. Of course, Andrew challenged it, but the courts retained it. You have civil defamation. So that people must know that creating information or even sharing information is a responsibility. It's just not a right. It also comes with a responsibility. So as we talk about education of the masses, letting people know all these things, let's also remind them that when you choose to broadcast, when you choose to be a citizen journalist, it comes with some level of responsibility.
Thank you. And I want to give the next 2 minutes to Carol to just wrap up the whole idea of digital and how technology can actually be used to fight fake news before we actually go to the Minister of ICT who is about to join us.
Okay. Yes, I think what Sheila said was very important. There are tools that we can use to be able to verify, especially, and some of them are very simple tools. They're not very complicated. You don't have to buy software. You just Google. You can verify images there, you can verify certain videos, you can verify information. So I think that technology, like Sheila said, has its space, and it has a very good, there are very many tools that we can use as journalists, but even just as ordinary people, to be able to find out and say, is this true, is this not true, who is speaking this, and that sort of thing. One thing I always tell the team I work with is that if someone has said, oh, this has happened, I say, check the Twitter handle of the person of the authority. Have they said that? Because the authorities now, the government has now sort of caught on to that, so you find that they make statements and stuff like that on their Twitter handles or on Facebook. So there's so many ways in which technology can be used to improve what we're doing, or even to combat fake media. It is true that technology is used to spread fake media in terms of the mobile phones we have now. Because we have phones, everyone is able to view something within seconds. But they're also able to verify that thing within seconds. Okay. So, like Sheila said, it's a double-edged sword. It may be a double-edged sword, but there is tools that we can use to be able to, and we must embrace technology, because it's the only way that we'll be able to combat the fake news, or the people who are coming up with the technology to propagate fake news.
Okay, so I just want to remind our viewers that we are having a conversation on fake news, the threats of fake news in the time of pandemic in particular. And right now we are going to be joined by the Minister of State for ICT, Honorable Peter Ogwang, and he will be able to share with us the role of government. And I think that we all agree that there is a policy role that has to be played here. Welcome, Honorable Minister, we are happy to have you.
Thank you so much. I am sorry that I've joined you late. I'm in Mbale.
Oh, okay.
I'm in your backyard here. I hope it gives me chicken today that I'm here. First of all, I want to thank all the panelists.
That is a given.
And all of you are busy.
Thank you. Thank you. Please speak to us. What the conversation we have been having at the moment is the role of government in all this. What do you think the government is able to actually do in combating fake news?
First of all, we must acknowledge that fake news is real, and sometimes it really takes much of our time. What pains me most is the level of distortion of facts. And this fake news tends to give a narrative which people are able to believe more than facts or experts' opinion in terms of information dissemination, which is the reason really I feel, and sometimes also I'm happy that I see Tina Andrew Mwenda here, I see Don Wanyama and all the professionals in the media fraternity, that whenever government tries to come in terms of trying to self-regulate some of these activities, sometimes they tend to begin telling us that we are busy trying to curtail on the media, we are putting a clamp down on the media. So, but nevertheless, it is true we have the Misuse of Computer Act, which is a law which is in place now. This entirely helps us to self-deal and manage on how sometimes people tend to give a wrong narrative in terms of using fake news. So, as far as government is concerned, and we're also building enough capacity as far as the government now, and that I can confirm to you that the Uganda Communications Commission is really getting up to date. And this I can confirm to you most times that when some of these fake news has come up, we are able to trace the origin of it. If it is within the country, we are able to identify the originators of this. So if it is even outside the country, now we have that program of capacity as a ministry and as well. That I'm able to say confidently with confidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. That speaks a lot to doing something after fake news has actually happened. But what is the government actually doing to prevent or to even reduce the occurrence of fake news? We have laws in place, we have systems in place, but how come, especially at a time like this, we see so much fake news actually going on?
In my opinion, first of all, I am happy that you, the professionals, you, the people in the profession, specifically, must come out and speak about this. Like now what we are doing is encouraging, because I've always tried to speak about the journalism profession. Yes, I know people who are spreading fake news can be anyone else. But in my own wisdom and opinion, once I protect my profession as a social worker, I don't allow anyone, or I put up a narrative which is able to drive people to know the ethics and the fundamentals, what I stand for. That helps us as government in doing what needs to be done. For instance, do people know the disadvantages and the dangers of fake news? Those who are spreading it. For instance, during this pandemic, do you know that if people get a narrative of fake news, like now, with due respect to my colleague, look at the narrative he has given. That narrative is even beginning to remove the expert opinion. This one I'm talking about Honorable Muhammad Insere. Recently, you've seen what he has spread all over about this COVID thing, about the test kits on COVID. That is very dangerous for us as a population. But entirely, as I can say, we have to work closely. Number one, we in government are ready to work with you. We are ready to see how to move into to push in, to remove, to attend this spread of fake news. Of course, I can't say that it can get finished. We can remove it all. No. We must accept to move with the change in that world now. And we all know that the investment now in the whole world is moving towards the IT, and in the IT specifically, seeing how to deal with this kind of menace of fake news. Thank you.
And before you came in, Andrew Mwenda in particular made an allegation that since you're here, you can speak to it, that government is actually the biggest producer of fake news or the biggest beneficiary of fake news. Can you please say something and how you envisage? It's good you're saying that you are ready to work with the rest, but who are the actors that you actually think would be able to work with government effectively?
The actors, of course, to begin with, is the media practitioners and the journalists. I do not, maybe Andrew, of course, the information Andrew gives us saying that we are the biggest, maybe consumers, or we are the ones who spread fake news. That is his opinion, but as a minister in the sector of communication and information, I want to say I don't agree with him. There are, of course, those people who would want within government, because what if I can say about something about government? We are not one within government. While even we have cadres who work for government, sometimes there are those who don't believe that and work for this government, as some of us do. So for that purpose, what Andrew says might also be true. But also, I want to say this, the government officers have standing, they have standing, what they call the public service standing orders, which they are meant to operate. That's why you see, in any setting, it's hard even for a PRO to communicate a question of government, and Amapedon is there. Why is it hard? Because it is a preserve of only, number one, either the permanent secretaries or the CEOs heading those organizations. So for purposes of that, in that opinion, maybe that's how Andrews say can be right, because they can afford to push in something wrong to provoke some of us to come out and speak or defend it. But I don't agree with him that we are the ones who really are leading in terms of spreading fake news. In most times, actually, it is us who come out to defend whatever fake news or to clarify on fake news. And Amapedon has been doing it excellently. Every time I don't know how they get to his Twitter account. I have never had access to mine, but it's always those Twitter account which is put on fake news. So don't be able to help us make more clarification on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. But I wonder also, some countries have laws where they're introducing laws where they can actually combat fake news. And is Uganda hoping to introduce a particular regulation or regulatory framework to actually deal with fake news in particular?
That one, I can say, recently I led some of the regulations in Parliament on this, on as far as the communication aspect is concerned. I can tell you, as I'm still a minister in the ministry, definitely we are going to have time with the regulators, specifically the Uganda Communication Commission, and all actors who wish us to always have a correct narrative, that we shall actually come up with the regulations as far as that is concerned. That I can take it up as a government and as a minister who is in the sector.
Okay.
That I can be able to follow it.
Okay, thank you. And finally, do you think the media has actually supported government in this time of in this time of COVID-19 effectively, and how is government going to reciprocate?
Oh my God, I want to thank the media so much. Even now here, today I've been in Busia this morning, and then I came to Dororo. Now as I speak, actually, I have been I'm meeting the district task force on Valley here. What has given us to win and what will make Uganda win this battle is the role the media has played. To my knowledge and ability, the statistics I have, 90.5% of the Ugandan population has access to radio and they listen to the radio. So for that purpose, 90% of the citizens of this country at least know as far as the guidelines the Minister of Health has given and as far as the presidential directives have been given, and that tells you that every part now you go, at least every Ugandan understands what is spoken about coronavirus. So for that purpose, the media has done a commendable job, and I don't know how to thank you. We are proud of you, and this is what we need from the media. That's why after one time I wrote a piece in New Vision. I did not to be because of the media. Most of us would be in casualty wards. Actually, I do not know what would be. That's why really, for the media, once you stand in for something and we work together, we have achieved it and we have gotten it. I don't know why we don't always stand together. I really need to beg the media, for the time we're in the government, please, this COVID is an eye-opener to us and we are proud of you. Can we put the same time to development? Andrew, you've always put much of your time. I'm happy my sister Sheila Nduichire is there. Can we try to always put much of this focus on development aspects of our country? I like always the research you give as Andrew Mwenda. You really come out with the well-researched information, but how many of us want to consume such information? This is why I want to appeal to the media. You're free to criticize us. You're free to identify areas of weaknesses. But can you give us time to talk about development, which will be able to shape the country and the future of our country? For this coronavirus and this pandemic, you have done extremely well, and want to call upon you, please continue. It is true, we also know the challenges which you're facing during this crisis, and I'm happy if you look at the presidential address. We know we owe some of you monies as government, so it is an area where we must see how we pay those areas which we owe you, so that we continue moving together as both the media and the government support us working together. So for me, I'm very, very happy with what we have done so far as the media. Please, bravo, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. We are pleased that you could join us. Thank you for giving us your thoughts. You're most welcome I'm now coming back to the studio.
I want to thank all the panelists there and thank my ministry, thank Awel and the team and Minister of Health. I know we have other challenges, but for today, thank you so much. Join you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, and have a safe stay in Mbale. Keep safe and stay safe.
I'm going to sleep under tents. You know what I've done now? Maybe you would have sent me to your compound so that I can put my tent in your compound.
Don't worry, I'll bring you chicken, Honorable Minister.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I think I need to get back to the studio.
Let's go. How are you?
Thank you. I need to get back to the studio, though. We have just under 5 minutes to wrap up, and so I will give each of us 30 seconds before I go to... Maybe I should start with the people on Zoom. Yes, sorry, not honorable, but Dr. Tayebwa, can you please give us your concluding remarks in under 1 minute?
Did you call me?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. Actually, my concluding remark is a question to the Honorable Minister before he runs away. Honorable Minister, you've lauded the role of the media, and I totally agree with you. And I'm Tayebwa, I'm not Godba, but I know Godba is my friend, and maybe we resemble a bit because of the gray hair. So, Honorable, I want you to comment on the issue of the closure, the indefinite closure of local language media. The New Vision we've had, they are closing Urumuri, they are closing Rupini, and the Top. And yet we know that traditional media, such especially radio in the local communities where you are, feeds a lot from the print media. I come from the School of Languages, Literature and Communication at Makerere University. So this is a very big issue of concern. We see it as the death of the local media. I want you to comment on that, Honorable.
Can we probably save that for the last comment so that we can move to the other people to make their last remark? Andrew Mwenda, can you hear me? Yes, please. Can you please give us your concluding remark? And the minister particularly disagreed with you, so please have your concluding remark.
Emily, you misled the minister. I did not say government is the biggest manufacturer of fake news. I said government is a big manufacturer. I think that the government, the opposition, and other social groups manufacture fake news. But also government is a victim of fake news. And I think that is the point I'm making, that fake news, government should not be seen as a neutral player in the fake news market. It is a partisan player in it. When it is benefiting from it, it will keep quiet. When the fake news hurt it, government, of course, will act. So we should be very careful when the government is acting. You see, you can read the truth, which hurts government, and the government wants you to, will claim that it's fake news. It has happened to me during my career as a journalist. The second point I wanted to make is to supplement on what Sheila and Ruchira were saying. Sheila, I did not say that technology is a bad thing and cannot be used to combat fake news. I said technology is a double-edged sword. Let me give you an example, Sheila. Today, if I posted a deep fake video, how many Ugandans do you think know that there is software to expose fake news, a deep fake video? I do not think there are more than 20 or 50 Ugandans who have that software. So the bottom line is this, that we should always be careful of technology. Technology has great things it does. It has negative things it does. This is not say that we should throw away technology. I'm not sure whether for every one bad thing it does, it has 3 good things. You seem to have too much faith in technology. First of all, I should tell you philosophically, technology does not change human nature. In fact, it allows us to express the same human nature. So if human nature is envious, technology will promote envy. If human nature is about love, technology will allow us to advance love. I am not a big fan of technology as an elixir to human problems. I actually think it both creates solutions and impediments and problems to human existence.
Thank you, Andrew. And I was using my powers as the moderator to provoke the minister to say something. So thank you for clarifying that you did not say it is the biggest. And Sheila, can you please give us your minute? We can't hear you, Sheila.
Unmute.
Sheila, please unmute.
I thought I would be more technological savvy.
Exactly.
And it appears a big challenge. Okay,
Yeah.
so first of all, my concluding remark is that just to understand the extent of fake news, I was reading an article before this discussion, and it was on BBC, and they said that between the month of March and April alone, Facebook detected 90 million content material that created manipulative and fake stuff about COVID-19. 90 million, and this is just Facebook. It's not Twitter, it is not WhatsApp, it is not TikTok. There's just so much. So while we let government take care of the laws and regulations, of course within the human rights envelope and cloud, I think we need to do the basics, especially as media and the private sector. One is what Don said, credibility. We must build our credibility and be the source of reference. When people come searching for news, scampering for news or verification, we should be the alternative choice, right? But then we also have media houses that, like Manda was saying, and I don't think that it's only NBS. So just for the record, I think that media houses sometimes slipped, have fallen short. So we also need to build credibility. We need to build ourselves and be the alternative choice of reference for whoever comes. But most importantly, I think we need to be forward-looking as a country. And like I said earlier on, that fake news is here to stay with us. Yeah, like AIDS has been christened. Yeah, it is here and it will stay with us forever. So how do we do it? We need to prepare the young people. We need to prepare the children of this nation to be able to have the skills and the knowledge to quickly verify as and when they get any information. And that can only be through the exposure. There's fourth industrial revolution, there's AI, there's machine learning. These things cannot only work when you grow up. You need to, there needs to be continuity. There needs to be empowerment through the curriculum. I gather universities like MUST, MUNI, and I think Gulu University already have those incorporated in the syllabus at the university, at the higher education level, but we also need to bring in the young generation.
Thank you, Sheila.
Lastly, let's train the communicators, because they need to be aware of, first of all, you need to first of all understand how the enemy operates for you to defeat them. I think that is the warfare language or something like that. So you need to know, first of all, what are these techniques that they use to create fake news, or what techniques do they use? And then only then can you be able to combat fake news. So even our communicators need training, regular training. They need to adequately communicate, not just communicate when there's a crisis, but also always be available and, of course, confident in using these platforms that we have.
Thank you.
So
thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sheila. Thank you very much, Sheila. And I think before I come back to the studio, let the minister, who is also online, respond to that comment, and then I come back to my neighbors. Thank you. There was a question, Honorable Minister, by Dr. William Tayebwa. Kindly give us your thought. We can't hear you, Honorable Minister.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay.
The question asked by Doctor, of course, I want to first of all say, I want to really call upon New Vision that what they are doing, they should not only focus on making profits for the organization or the institution or the corporation. It's about our identity. So that corporation is entirely government has shares in it. We have got a lot of complaints. And as a Minister of Information, we are taking up the matter of cabinet so that government can make a position on the issue which New Vision is taking it now. So for them, if they are looking at profit making, it's unfortunate that government has shares in that corporation. So for that matter, we are going to follow it up. So I want to agree with you, Doctor, on my own and on behalf of the Minister of Information, we shall definitely give a position on as far as New Vision is concerned. But also, you must know that New Vision is under Minister. But for us, when we come in, we are coming in under the aspect of information. And that is our area of focus, and to our people. So we cannot be able to say this newspaper, local newspaper should be taken off market. No, I don't agree with that. Secondly, I want to thank, of course, Andrew, that I've got the content, what was responding, which I want to say. Andrew, you're right. I know I've been a beneficiary of some of the issues you've raised here as government, but also, I also know sometimes when it is working for me, I keep quiet, but if it's not working for me, I tend to say this is the honest, and these are the things we must work together to fight. And that one I agree with you. To my sister Sheila, you're right, as a professionals, we have a lot, of course. We need to do a lot in terms of training. But what I don't agree with you, Sheila, is when you say that fake news is going to be here as far as AIDS is concerned, no. To a future, even the cure of AIDS will be found. They very well be sure that the cure of corona will also be found. So we cannot allow fake news to continue remaining in the fraternity of the world. No, we have to find a cure for fake news. And this is about technology. We shall find it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for being very honest in the spirit of not doing fake news. Thank you very much. And I return to the studio. I will start with you, Emma, and please give us your concluding remark. You have also benefited from the larger conversation.
Thank you very much. I'm glad that we are having this conversation, because it's until we explain to the public and they understand the concept of fake news, misinformation, malinformation, disinformation, that they will be able to make the right choice on what media they consume and who they should believe in as far as health information is concerned. I would like to say and also make this coronavirus, COVID-19, has come maybe, unfortunately, as a blessing in disguise. There has been this aspect of diffusion of innovation. There has been delay by the Ugandans or the population to adopt certain technologies. But right now we have people joining a studio conversation via Zoom. We can no longer give excuses that I was late in traffic, I was not able to be in a meeting, and I hope that government agencies will invest in video conferencing facilities, such that even some expenditures, for instance, on travel abroad for conferences, we can cut on that expenditure. That is my personal opinion. So when it comes to health information, this what we are doing benefits us as Ministry of Health, because sometimes scientists find it hard to go around certain aspects, and also working with them because sometimes they think some information should only be kept for them. Yet this information, when it is communicated to the public, can help the public make informed decisions. But my appeal also to the media is that we should observe ethics. And sometimes, like a disease like coronavirus, we need to observe those ethics like patients' privacy. I don't want to mention this, but one media house mentioned the name, for instance, of a corona victim. We have been deliberately giving the age, the location, because of the issue of stigma. But if an editor or the media house allows that to slip through, and you cause people to stigmatize this person or to discern him, that is responsibility. So I appeal to the general population. What information you're going to process, put on your personal account, think about the impact it might cause. It might affect your members of the family if it is misperceived, or people get to understand it in the opposite side. So let's observe some level of responsibility. But as I conclude, I would like to say that the population has largely stood with us as the Ministry of Health and Government. They have adhered to the guidelines and the directives of the President, and that has helped us to come a long way. But we are observing that there is a lapse as far as following these guidelines, and it's worrying us as the Ministry of Health. When you go downtown and you find people now, the face masks have become like necklaces. They are using them to cover the chin instead of the mouth and nose. That one leads us to worry much, because if you're not following the message, that means the fight against the pandemic might suffer some setbacks. So my appeal that we consistently follow this information. It is available on the Ministry of Health website. As the spokesperson, we are also available to ensure that we give you the right information, and also more information that you might think is free of bias is available on the World Health Organization website.
Thank you, Emma. That was needed. Thank you. And Carol?
Yes, thank you, Emily. I think for me, a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to thank the Minister for appreciating the media, because the media has really, I think they have done a good job. I believe we have done a good job, and I believe it's been difficult in many ways, especially because of the lockdown and things that happened. But they have, I know personal stories of people who went through, whatever it could take, sleeping in studios, walking to workplaces to ensure that the news is out. So I thank him for thanking us, and I applaud all my colleagues for the work they have done and continue to do. And my appeal is that when you have a situation like this that is a threat to life, I believe that everyone who is a stakeholder should be able to work as together, if I may put it that way, and not in silos. A lot of the time we work in silos. The government has its own plan and agenda, the media the same, the academic world the same. But in a situation like this, I think there needs to be a way in which we need to say there's a threat to life here, there's a threat to livelihood. We need to work together and provide the information that is needed, be honest, be truthful, and put out what is needed to be put out. So that for me is very important, that, that people come together in order to save life and doing it the right way. And then the second thing and the last thing for me is, I think as a media we need to, and even the government and the authorities, we need to talk to the people a lot more. What I have noticed is that a lot of the time we are talking to the authorities, so we're talking to Emma to verify something for us, we're talking to Dawn to get this for us, we're, you know, the ministries and things like that, but what about the people? What are they thinking? We need to go to the communities and say, have you heard this news? What do you think about it? Do you believe it? Do you not believe it? What is the next step? What are you going to do about this? Because then we'll begin to see what they have been told, what they have picked up, and what they are taking as correct or not correct. And then we can begin to actually speak to them. Because when we know their fears, we know their worries, we know their thoughts, then we can begin to sort of say, this is what we need to give them. Because half the time, I believe that we are putting out important information, but I do not know if we are really understanding what our audiences want to hear, what they want to be told, and what they want to also be heard and say, this is my fear, this is my problem, what are you doing about it? So I think we need to do that a lot. And you know, it comes from a conversation I had with my aunt yesterday, and she was saying her children, one of her sons was saying, you know, Mommy, I wanted to sit P7 this year and finish, and my goal is to go to Harvard. But with this disease, it means I'm going to die. And she's like, where did you get that from? And then her daughter was saying that my plan was to give you 3 grandchildren. You know, she was thought, yeah, I'm going to finish school and I'm going to get married and have children. But now with this coronavirus, I'm going to die. So I realized that the children have been, you know, no one is talking about them or talking to them and finding out what are they thinking and giving them information. And there are many communities like that, just not the children, but there are different sets of people. So we need to go out there and find out. And then yes, so that's my point. We need to find out what the community wants to know, and then provide the information for them.
Thank you very much, Carol. And Dawn, we have 1 minute to go.
Okay, thank you, Emily. It's been an illuminating discussion. Now, for me, the point here is that in this whole maze of fake news, like I said earlier, it's going to be the credibility issue. You see, if we're sick, okay, some people might go to the shrine and whatever, but naturally most of us will go to medical people for treatment. If you want to build, you're going to seek out an engineer's guidance, expertise. I mean, professionals, that's what I'm talking about. So in the field of news, the professionals have to be the media. That is it. You can have 1 million citizen journalists, whatever, but they might not have as much credibility as you, the branded media, traditional, even the new media, whatever it is. But there must be someone whom I know that I can go and reference and check a story, and I'll be sure, like Dr. mentioned earlier, it's a balanced story, it is fair, it is accurate, you know, it is all these things. I have seen a trend, by the way, where we had these exciting, you know, faceless citizen journalists, most of whom were actually putting sensational news on their pages. I don't want to mention names here, but there are people who came on the scene and they had all this followership because we're dealing in gossip and this and that. Then gradually people, I think, realize that these people don't have credibility. You say someone's going to be arrested over this this afternoon, 3 months later the person has never been arrested. And someone comes back and questions and says, but you told us 3 months ago this person was going to be arrested. So what I'm saying is that some of the citizen journalists, especially those who engage in fake and sensational news, lose credibility over time. So the arbiter, in my view, Andrew was wondering who should be the arbiter. The arbiter in all this has to be the media. And for it to do that adequately, the media must be credible.
Thank you very much, Dawn. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Andrew from Kanyandahi. I hope I have pronounced that well. Thank you, Sheila from Nalia. Thank you, Dr. Tayebwa from Makere. Thank you, Carol Beyanga. Thank you, Emmanuel and Dawn. And of course, thank you to the Honorable Minister who was able to join us from Mbale. And we have been coming to you live from the Ministry of ICT in their studios, coordinated by the Government Information Center. It's a wonderful place. Thank you for hosting us, and thank you for bringing this conversation to the citizens. And I think that we have all learned as much as we could from each other, but also we hope that we have been able to debunk some of the myth that is out there regarding COVID-19 and what fake news actually is. I think all my panelists, this has been a very large panel, and we have done really well. Thank you very much. Stay safe and stay safe.
I think this is a fundamental change.
Authentic.